I'm Matt Bishar with REIT.com here in New York City for REIT Week 2015. I'm joined today by David De La Rosa, Vice President Advisory and Consulting with Green Street Advisors. David, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, there's been a lot of chatter about the emerging Fibra market in Mexico. For those unfamiliar with Fibras, can you explain a little bit about what they are and share a few highlights about the industry?
A Fibra is the Mexico equivalent of a REIT in the US. It's a tax advantage structure that owns income-producing real estate. Fibras were first introduced in 2004, but it wasn't until 2008 that a few prominent Mexican families started evaluating the structure. In 2011, one of these families, after overcoming a few challenges, listed the first Fibra called Fibra Uno, which raised about $300 million in its initial public offering, bringing the total market cap of the sector to about $700 million. The door was now open for the public markets, and Fibras started following. There were 2 listings in 2012, 4 in 2013, and 2 in 2014, bringing the total number of Fibras to 9 with a total market cap of $18 billion. Despite the rapid growth in the sector, the Fibra market is still relatively small compared to the US, but to put things in perspective, the entire real estate market in Mexico is about $500 billion in size versus about $7 trillion in the US. So it's grown quite rapidly relative to its market size. Capital raising has been a little bit slow so far this year, but people still think that the Fibra market's going to double in size in the near future. And I think this will happen as Fibra management teams adopt US REIT best practices and as the market evolves over time.
And who have been key investors in Fibras?
Mexican pension funds called Afores have been key investors in the Fibra market. Historically, the Afores could only invest in bonds, but because the Fibras provide them bond-like cash flows with the real estate with equity-like upside, Fibras have been an interesting option for the Afores. And Fibras have actually outperformed the broader Mexico stock market from 2011 to 2014. And so a lot of these Afores poured more and more capital into the sector. In addition to the Afores, the emerging market funds have also been active in the Fibra market. Mexico's positive macro trends, like its recent energy reforms, growing middle class, and strengthening manufacturing sector, have attracted these emerging market investors to the Mexico story. And I think Fibras have been just one of the ways in which they've tapped into those headline opportunities. And while US REIT investors have been circling the opportunity, many have sort of avoided the Fibra market because of governance structures and the small size. And the US REIT market has had a lot of interesting investment opportunities over the last few years. So these US investors haven't really been motivated to look south of the border. But this could change as Fibra management teams adopt US REIT best practices and as the market grows in size.
Now, you mentioned that it's been 4 years since the first Fibra listed on the Mexico Stock Exchange. How has the market evolved, and how do you see it to continue evolving?
Well, unlike US REITs, which are primarily internally managed, the majority of Fibras are externally managed. This external structure has led to high management fees for investors at the onset. But recently, investors have become much more vocal about these fee structures, and so what we've seen is fees begin to lower over time. Green Street believes the fee structures will continue to become more shareholder-friendly, but in the long run, we think that eventually the Fibras will become internally managed. This won't happen anytime soon, but Fibras, like US REITs in the 90s, will be forced to change their practices when there's a correction in the market or some large downturn. And we think that'll happen over time.
David, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
For more on this and other REIT news and analysis, be sure to visit REIT.com.